Vaisai, welcome back to Yerushalmi Yoma. Now, there is a shir today, but the next shir after today, I will be away a few days, will be on the 3rd of December, right? Which is roughly 2 weeks today. Okay, that'll be the next shir. Okay, we are Perishishi Alacha Vav, which is Mem Daled Amud Beis. Okay, we've spoken about the one who's taking the goat Lazazel. Back to the avodah of the Kohen Gadol. He comes to the par and the goats which are about to be burnt. Right, you've given the goat to be sent to the Meshaleach to take away. You come to the par and soy which are slaughtered, which you sprinkled the blood, the Kodesh Kedoshim and the Heichal. Okay, and these you most korbanos, they're usually eaten by the Kohanim, but not these. These are burnt outside Yerushalayim, actually, in a special place designated for it. So you tear them up, and they take out the various fats and limbs and some which go on the mizbeach. Nesanam b'mages, you put the emurim. It's like a vessel, a big tray of some kind. B'hiktiran, and you prepare them for offering al gabe mizbeach on the mizbeach. So the emurim and so on go on the mizbeach. Kalaan b'maklos. They take the par and the soy, like the part of the body of the animal, and you put the limbs, like you sort of interweave them on sticks. Yeah? And that's how you hang them on these two poles, on the base of Sreifa. And then you take them to the place of designated burning, which is outside Yerushalayim. Right? It's an area meyuchad for that. It's also called Beis Hadeshen. Okay? Now, the people who are involved in this become their clothes, they become tamei, their clothes become tamei. At what stage do they become tamei? When the par and the soy leave the walls of the azara. Rosh Hashanah, he says, no, it's the time when the fire is burning on most of the limbs. At that point is when they are tamei. Okay, so he comes to his par and they're going to take it to the base of Sreifa. Anantanina. We've learned in our Mishnah that straight after the Sari is sent away, the Kohen Gadol comes, and he comes to the ones which are being burnt, and he sends them off to be burnt. And after that, he would read the Kriyas HaTorah of that day. Is to know, Tony, there are some who learnt that after sending the goat to Azazel, at that point, at that point, he's reading the Kriyas HaTorah. So therefore, sorry, I lost the page here. Right, of Yom Kippur, and after that you're coming to the par and the soy. So which way came first? The par and the soy to be burnt, or the reading of the Torah? Aruch Hananya, Kura Mesayah Lemasnisin. The pasuk supports our Mishnah. It says, the one who sends the goat Lazazel, straight after that it says, there's par hachatos v'soy hachatos. So you see the juxtaposition tells me that the burning of the par and the soy was straight after sending the goat to Azazel. Rabbana said, the pasuk actually can fit in even with the Tana of this brisa. Why? Even though the Sreipas Par and the Soy were read, it's written straight after the sending of the goat, it doesn't mean they were done straight after. It's Ka'enesh Nesalek mit Tiberia. Imagine a person, he has an intention to go to Tiberia, from Tiberia to Siporin. Adu Tiberia, while he's still in Tiberia, Amrin v'Siporin hu Yosef. They say, he's in Siporin, because his kavanah is to go up there. So the Maisa, we haven't taken the par and the soy yet out. We're waiting until after the Kriya. Nevertheless, the Torah says par chatas soy chatas, because that's already about to happen. Right? It's going to happen soon. Now the par and the soy of Hashem of Yom Kippurim, they're parim hanisrafim. That's what we said. That's what they're called. The ones that are burnt. And seirim hanisrafim. Right? The flesh is not eaten. They're burnt in the Beis Hadeshen outside Yerushalayim. Now we have some questions about them. Reb Zrika Omar, Reb Zrika Sha'al, he said, Reb Zira asked, Parim hanisrafim was Seirim hanisrafim shenitzma'u. Now these things are not going to be eaten anyway, so they became tamei. So ma'ashi safu kumitzvasa. Now, if they've become tamei, can you still burn it the usual way outside Yerushalayim, or is it like other kachim that became tamei, which is burnt in the Azorah? Right now, on the one hand, they're not going to be eaten anyway. So does it really matter that they became tamei? Maybe you can burn it in the usual place, or is it like something's gone wrong, like the other korbanos, whatever, which are burned in the Azorah? So that's the question. Well, as I said, it's not there to be eaten anyway. It's not even meant to go on the Mizbeach, these things, right? These are burnt outside. So they're not even meant to go on the Mizbeach. So maybe it doesn't matter so much. Now, what is the question of Zeira is with some situations. They said, what is the question? What cases was he thinking about? But Shenitzmu Lifnei Zrika, where they became Tameh before the sprinkling of the blood. If they were only Tameh after the sprinkling, then there's no question they can be burnt out outside properly. Because Karani Alav, I say on them, it says, we learn you can bring a carbon b'mayda on its festival, after Shabbos, even if it falls on Shabbos, and b'mayda after Tumah, even in a state of Tumah. So these carbonas anyway push away Tumah. So if you sprinkle the blood and then it became Tameh, you can carry on and treat it as normal and burn it outside. So there's no reason for any question of Zeira, maybe only in a case where the carbonas were Tameh before the sprinkling. That's when you can have a question. Because maybe they're not going to push away Tumah, because you can still bring another carbon in its place. Rabbi Yossi said, now, the Eidah, now what about the Pahelam Davar, the Tzibur? Remember, but the base didn't make a mistake. And the Pav Kohen Gadol who made an Aveira, let's say, he has to served up at his Zara B'Shogeg, whatever. These Karbanos, Shalai Kasa B'Mayda, they don't have that phrase B'Mayda to tell me they push away Tumah. Les Shema Mino Klum. Now you can't learn anything about the Safek Reb Zeira with these other Karbanos. These Karbanos, even though you've sprinkled the blood, they don't push away Tumah. It could be the question of Zeira was with these Karbanos, even in a case where the blood has been sprinkled, you'll still have a question with these cases, right? They don't push away Tumah. The Pahelam Dava, whatever it is. Now then the Gemara says, the Rabbi Yosef was said after the time of his Talmud Rabbi Bun Bachia. He says, Rabbana, in the beginning, Lo Mismana. So that's what Rabbi Yosef was the one who said, oh, maybe we're talking about Pa'eda, Pa'kabam Shel Tzibur. So Rabbana, Lo Mismana Rabbi Yosef, Rabbi Yosef, my teacher, Kiyam Hacha, he didn't stop from fixing the question here. He mentioned here, he's talking about the question of Pa'avasai Shel Yom Kippurim. So at the beginning, sort of he limited, it was in this sugya, they limited the question about a case where the tumah was before the sprinkling. In a case where it's already sprinkled, it would push away tumah, as we said, with the Yom Kippur one. But after that, so in the beginning, that was the understanding, that was the question, right? Tumah before sprinkling, is Yom Kippur, fine. But after that, Amalei Rebun Bachia said, Kim, you could have a question, but Pa Mashiach and Eidah, even after sprinkling, now they don't push away tumah. And then you can have your question even after sprinkling. And Rabbi Yossi agreed, and that's why he said what he said. So basically he said, you're right, we could even have a question with them, and it'll be after sprinkling. So what is the din then? Can we still burn them properly, commit so if they became Tameh Yom Kippur one before sprinkling, or not? Very good question. We have no answer. Now, Rabbi Lazar asked another question. Parim Hanisrafin and Seir and Hanisrafin, so these ones that are burnt outside, like as we said, Shiyasa, right, Rabbi said you got to put your chulin head on again now. Right? Imagine you have an animal. We said they become tameh when the animal leaves the azara, let's say, according to the Tanakama, right? Fine, very good. What happens when 50% of the animal is outside, 50% is inside? Right? You know what's going to come soon. Right. So 50's gone out. 50's gone in. There was one limb where the majority of it was out, which made up that 50%. But a minority of it was still in. Now, had the limb completely gone out, you've got the majority outside. You've got 51% outside. But this limb, part of it is still in. Do we throw the little bit which is in after the majority which is out? In, out. Do we shake it about, right? What do? Do we say the animal is considered leaving in the majority because that 10% that's left in is considered as if it's gone out because Rubai Kakula, the minority should follow the majority? Or we don't say that as far as one limb is concerned. Milse Amra, do you remember that in Chulin about Overoitev and the limb leaving the birth and not the birth, right? Milse Amra, from the words of Rabbi Lazar we can learn. So one thing's clear. Look, we need the majority of the animal. We don't say it's not metame clothes until it's all gone out. No, once you got majority. If it's fixed that in front of us, it's as if the majority of the animals left, then the person is Matame, his clothes. Now, the Safek of Rabbi Lezer is said also a case where the majority of the Ava doesn't make up the most of the animal. We're talking about a case where you've got half the animal in and half out, and you don't have a majority out in one place. So now what about the majority of the limb goes against the majority of the animal? So let's see. Shita Adamil. So one thing's clear. Yasa Rubai, the 51% is outside. Right? And you're using 10% of one limb to make that 51%. But the majority of that limb is still inside. You with me? 51% is out, using 10% of a certain limb. And after that, the majority of that limb that was 10% out is now completely out. Now, even so, definitely the animal was matame from when the meroiv, when you got 51%, the animal was tame, even though you didn't have the majority of that particular limb. Now, we're going to look at the animal, right? The animal, majority of the animal is out, therefore is matame clothes. We're not going to look at the limbs which are still inside. Right? We're not going to say, oh, this limb is still inside because only 10% is out. We should treat it as if it's inside. And therefore, you don't have your 51%. We're not going to say that. The majority's gone out, 51%, that's gone out. Okay? When you've got a rove of something which is going against the rove klali of a guf hadavar, we'll follow the rove klali. We'll follow the general rove. We're not going to follow the individual rove. So we're not going to follow that limb. When the majority is outside, we say the animal's gone outside. That is no question about that. Where do you have a question? The question is like this. The animal is cut into bits before it's being taken out. It's been broken up into parts. Yadsa Eva. Now, the majority of the animal has gone out in various bits, various limbs that are all cut up. And that majority needs a miut, or it needs a minority of one of the limbs, but the majority of that limb is still inside. So again, it's a majority of the animal, but not in an animal form, it's in limbs, broken limbs. And you're using 10% of one limb, where the majority of it is still inside. And after that, the rest of that limb that you only had 10%, now that whole limb has gone out. So the question is, do we say, since the majority of that limb making up your majority was still inside, we'll treat that limb as if it was still inside. Therefore, you never had a majority of the animal going out. Because since you didn't have the animal, it's not one entity anymore, right? Therefore, we should say each limb is treated in its own right. And since that limb, the majority of it was inside before, therefore it's as if it was all inside. Do you understand? Because it's not a one entity animal, why should we just follow? It's not an animal. We can look at it. Every limb is specific. We have to look at every limb separately. Now, another suffix about the tumah of those who are dealing with the burning of the parim and the seirim and israfim. He asked, parim and israfim, seirim and israfim, sheyatsu, they left the Azara, about to be burnt, but chazru, and they were brought back. People brought them back. I don't know why they brought them back. And he's talking about the Tanakama, who hold those involved their tummy as soon as they leave the Azara. Here they left the Azara, but then they came back. Tummy. Shita derech hazira. And one thing's clear: on the way coming back to the Azara, that korban, anyone who carrying it on the way back in, ain't never tummies begotten. Those people involved are not tummy; they're close. What was the question? The ones who took it out in the beginning, they started going out. Should they become tamei, them and their clothes, when they took it out? Or do we say, look, it ended up coming back in? So going out was nonsense. It wasn't worth anything. Therefore, it turned out they never took it out to burn it. Therefore, they shouldn't be tamei. Now, we've learned an answer to this question in Zvachim. The people carrying the parim and seirim israfim b'moitos on sticks to burn them outside Yerushalmi. Yatsu harishonim, when the first carriers at the front of the sticks started leaving, they've left the actual walls of the Azara. And the back two, lo yatsu, have not left. Harishonim and tamin begodim, so the first two at the front, their clothes are now tamei. So the people at the back are not tamei till they leave the Azara. right? The other people are still in the Azara. Therefore, for them, it's if they've not started the process yet until they actually leave the Azara. Yatsu elu ve'elu, and afterwards, right? After Yatsu, if the last people left, elu ve'elu v'tam begadim, both of them are matame. So both of them. So originally, only the first lot. Now, when the people follow them, the back two follow them, that's when they are tameh. Now, what do you see? If you're in the Azara, you don't really have a connection to the process of the taking it out to burning. So the same thing here. Look, the animals come back into the Azara. You never had a process of taking it to burning. So it turns out their clothes shouldn't be tameh. Oh, Rav Yudan, the father of Ratani, he said, Shanahi. No, the Mishnah there is very different. The reason why the people in the front are not tameh, the people in the front, in our case, right, they're not tameh, is not because the fact that they come back and they've ruined the process. It's another reason. The Siv, it says in the pasuk with the Parim and Israfim, b'haitzi, you're not tameh, you got to take it out. Al shiyosi v'shus kol hamaitzi, the taking out from Rishus Azara has to include the ones who take himself, basically not just the power going out, but the one himself has left the Azara. There's no raya as far as our situation. It seems the people also have to go out, right? That's what he's saying here. Just going back a second. We said before, the people taking it on the poles, when the first ones go out, outside the walls of the Azara, and the Achronim will not yet get out, the Rishonim are tameh clothes, the Achronim are not, until they leave. But when the Achronim leave, then they're both. Okay, so what are we answering now? That really, the reason why the people standing inside are not tameh is not because we haven't got a process of taking it out. It says b'haitzi, right? Basically, you've got to go out. Well, the question is there, I'm afraid, we've got no answer. The Bavli says, there's no suffix, tumah is not batel mafreya. They said this is a different situation, according to Belez's question. Once the animals come back in the Azara, there's a new group of people carrying it. When they're standing outside the Azara, they've taken the animal to take it out. And the tumah, Rav Les is asking the tumah, they took the animal out. The tameh, even if they bring it back, maybe do we say while it's still in the Azara? Oh, whatever. Let's carry on. Rav Yirmiyah said, Rav Elazar asked, how many Srafim? Now they leave the Azara before the sprinkling of the blood. Ma'ashi paslu mishum yaitse. They've left the Azara, but you've not sprinkled the blood yet. Are they puzzle, like other Kabbalas that have left their place? Or do you say, look, they're meant to go out anyway after the sprinkling of the blood, so the fact they went out a bit prematurely doesn't matter. So why is there a question here? According to which opinion is he asking the question? Rish Lakish. Now he holds, an animal is going to leave anyway, but if you take it prematurely, it's puzzle. So we have a question. Israfim, maybe they're puzzle by taking them out of the Azara before sprinkling. Or maybe Rish Lakish never said his din only with Kachim Kalim, although you're allowed to take it after Zrika, but there's no chayva to take them out, there's no obligation to take them out. Parim and Israfim, you have a chiyuv to take them out after sprinkling. Could be he will agree they're not puzzle by taking them out a bit early, because you'll have to take them out. So maybe it doesn't matter. That was his question according to Rish Lakish. That, maybe it doesn't matter. But according to Rabbi Yochanan, it's clear, taking them out before their time does not puzzle them. According to Rabbi Yochanan, if it's going to leave anyway, it's not puzzle if you take it out before the Zrika. Now, where do we bring the machlokes Rabbi Yochanan and Rish Lakish? The Ispalgum. They argue. We've learned in Menachas. Ha'shoichet taida bifnim. You shecht a carbon taida in the Azara. Velachma, the loaves. Remember how many loaves there are, Rabbi Isai, for the carbon taida? Any offers? Not 10? Not 20? 40, correct. So ha'shoichet taida bifnim. You shecht a taida in the Azara. Velachma, the bread is chutz lachayma, outside the walls, like hadash halechem. The bread does not become holy. When you make the bread holy, there's kedushas damim, a monetary value. You mustn't eat it. Okay, goes to the kainim. They don't have kedushas guf like a carbon. They're not possible through tuyayim. Okay, you can redeem them. Once you've slaughtered the taida, they are mekadosh. They become like a carbon. They got kedushas haguf, etc. Okay, so what we got here? The lechem is outside the al-chayma. Like the bread is not holy. If they go outside the choma, they're puzzled, even though they're holy already. And definitely if they were not holy there. But the question is, what does this mean? Rabbi Yochanan, what wall are we talking about? Rabbi Yochanan said, when we said the bread is outside the walls, it's outside the walls of Yerushalmi. If it was within the walls, it can become holy, even though it was outside the Azara. And if it was holy in the Azara, and some of it went out before sprinkling, that's not a problem. Now, ideally, the bread needs to be in the Azara until you sprinkle the blood. It should really be in the Azara. But since anyway it's going to leave the Azara after Zrika, therefore it's not possible if it went out a bit premature. That's what Rabbi Yochanan said. Rish Lakish Amar, he said when the Mishnah said outside the walls the bread is not holy, it means even if it was Chutz L'Chaimas Azara. No, it was in Yerushalayim, it was outside the Azara walls. It's not holy. Bread taken out from the Azara before sprinkling is possible. It definitely can't become holy there. Although it's going to leave the Azara anyway, but if you take it out premature, then it's going to be possible. Okay, now the Gemara says Rish Lakish follows his shitta elsewhere as well. Rish Lakish Kedate follows his view elsewhere. Damar Ravam B'Shem V'Shem Lakish Basa Shlamim. You have a Shlamim carbon. Sheyatza. Now it left the Azara before sprinkling. Then it was brought back in. V'nizrak alav min hadam, and you sprinkled for it the blood. Panisal mishem yaitze. It's possible because it's left the Azara. Now, although anyway it's going to leave the Azara after sprinkling, because Shlamim is Kachim Kalim, it can be eaten in the whole town. Nevertheless, before sprinkling, it's placed in the Azara. It should be in the Azara. If you take it out, it's possible. Now, we said, the question of Rabbi Lazar, if there's a psul with things that go out, the Parim Mesirim and Israfim, was only asked to Rish Lakish. To Rabbi Yochanan, then you can't say psul yotze, because it's going to go out anyway. Now the Gemara says possibly the question could be asked even according to Rabbi Yochanan. On Rabbi Yochanan, I feel like Rabbi Yochanan. We could ask this question or ask this question even on Rabbi Yochanan. The reason why Rabbi Yochanan allowed a shlamim or the loaves of Taida leaving the Azara to Yerushalayim, leaving a bit premature, but that's because Yerushalayim, look, it's not considered a wall for like your Asham offering, your Oila offering. No. But machitza hila kachim kalim, it's your wall for eating your shlamim, right? They can be eaten there within Yerushalayim, right? Even after sprinkling. So it's going to go out there in a way. That's going to be its machitza in the future. Therefore, even if it left before sprinkling, it wouldn't be a problem. However, chutz l'chaimas Yerushalayim, outside the walls of Yerushalayim, is not a wall for anything. It could be if the Parim Mesirim and Israfim, these Parim were brought out before sprinkling outside Yerushalayim, they're not within any walls, any halachic walls of sanctification status. Therefore, they should be possible even according to Rabbi Yochanan. But Abba Ramana said, do you honestly think that the place outside the walls of Yerushalayim is not considered a wall for them? It's not a wall for the Parim Mesirim and Israfim. Of course it's a wall. That is the place where the mitzvah's done. It must be within some sort of status of a wall, because that's where you do the mitzvah. It must be that according to Rabbi Yochanan, they're not possible even if they leave before Zrika. And the Safek Rabbi Lazar is only Shach according to Rish Lakish. Now that's another very good question. I'm afraid we have no answer. According to Rabbi Yochanan, there's no Safek. They're not possible. They're going to go out anyway. Okay. Now, the Gemara brings another Safek about Parim Mesirim and Israfim. Now, when you carry them, and the burning of the Parim Mesirim and Israfim, they are matame a severe tumah. They're matame the person, because they're matame the person who's involved in carrying it and burning it. Now, what about, are they matame before they're being carried? A tumah kala. Maybe they can be matame food at an earlier stage. So, Rabbi Lazar Shah, Parim Mesirim and Israfim, Ma'ashi Tame, can they be matame food, mashkin, b'lai hechsha, without any liquids making it susceptible to receive tumah, or b'lai tumah? If these things are matame food and drink, even if they're not muksha for tumah yet, and they haven't even touched tumah, because they're going to end up with a severe tumah, maybe earlier on they're matame a light degree of tumah, right? Therefore they should be matame even beforehand. Asked Shmuel Kaputkia. Shmuel asked, if you're going to tell me that matame before you take out the Azara, if that's the case, me'ati yitame zemaren. when you take these limbs out of the animal, all the limbs will be tamei. Is that what you're going to say? How can they bring the emurim on the mizbeach if it's automatically tamei all the limbs there? Ella, he says, you have to say the question was said, kashapirshu, after the animal has been slaughtered, the emurim have come out from the animal. Before you take the limbs out, definitely they're not matame. Because they're still, this animal needs maisa. You need to take the limbs out. So, take them out of the azara, you have to. And then later on they'll have a severe tumah. But now, it's not severe tumah. It's too early in the stage, right? And now, at the moment, we've not even taken the limbs out yet. You can't tell me the limbs are tamei. The Gemara says, even if you're going to tell me that the Suffolk or Relaza was a case where the limbs are the low pirshu, they've not yet been taken from the animal. Don't ask me that the limbs should be bitame from the flesh itself when they're still inside. Kahada, like we've learned in halacha, ein mechatas metamen dava lachsavitamis vimenu. Although, let's say the waters of the mechatas, right, the red heifer, is like an avatuma, it's metame other things. Nevertheless, it cannot have a koyach of things to go and be metame mechatas. What's this? He says those things which are tamei can't go back and be metame the mechatas. Yeah, mechatas metame dava lasa v'litamis men. It can't be metame something which will go and metame the mechatas again. You get that? It can't defile something which then that thing is going to defile the mechatas. It can't do that. So it's exersa kasav. Otherwise, the water will be possible forever because of the person carrying it or the vessel which they're put. So the same thing here. You're going to tell me the basa of the pa and serim which are betame, but however these limbs are not going to be tame through them. They're not going to start the limbs being betame them back. Otherwise, you'll never be able to put it on the mizbeach, right? So that's definitely not going to happen. The emurim are not tame through that. Through even if the person carrying it is tame, the emurim are definitely not tame. Now the Gemara comes on the suffix of Rabbi Lezer. How's it Rabbi Yirmiyah? Hooray! Rabbi Lezer had a question, and we're going to ask against that. How's Rabbi Yirmiyah? Hooray! Niblas oif tahor. A tahor bird. When is it metame? If it's in your throat. Yeah. Hooray! Hu metame tumah masechlin. Now that has the tumah, can be metame foods, but without any water, liquids, whatever. Without touching tumah. From the tamas tumah chamura is going to have a severe tumah. So you see, anything which will have a severe tumah can be metame even now tumah of foods. So why has Rabbi Lezer got a question? You see, that's what happens. Rabbi Yosef, nimla sofa tahor ein la mechitza. Look, there's no place where it can be metame tumah chamura. It's metame the one who swallows it, wherever it is, right? Wherever he is. Therefore, it's something which is going to have tumah chamura wherever. However, Elu, the Parim and Serim and Israfim, Yesh Lahem Machitza. They have a place where they will be Matame Tumah Chamura. They're not Matame the Severe Tumah until they've left the Azara. There's a place where they're Matame, not before that. So Rabbi Lezer therefore has a question. Maybe before they've left the Azara, they're not considered Muchan to be Matame Tumah Chamura. They're not at that stage yet. Because they're Mechus Maisi. You need to take them out of the Azara. And that way, that's when you'll bring a tumah chamura. But maybe now they can't give a little tumah because they're not in a status of providing a severe tumah. Amar said, well, nivla soifa tahor. Wait a minute, a tahor bird, you put it in your throat. Yesh la mechitza. It also has a wall. Why? It's also got an ability to become a tumah chamura because the throat, Adam, the person's throat is the mechitza. Adam hi mechitzasa, right? It's only metame when you swallow it. If you're not going to say that, you're going to tell me the nevela of tahor does not have a mechitza at all. And the fact that it's metame in the throat is because that is the tzura of the way it gives out tumah, that swallowing is considered like touching, like, absorbing and so on. Imagine a person brings a dog. Kelef, b'bisha begadim. You put clothes on it. You give it a tahor bird to eat. Shema matames begadim bebeis habliya. Are you going to tell me it defiles the clothes when it's got this food in its throat? The bliya is like magatuma with the dog and its clothes which are on it. Definitely not. It's not matame only when it's in a person's throat, right? The dog is not tame, yes? When it's in your throat, you have tahor bird which has not been shechted, then it's going to be tame. But a dog having it is not. The dog wearing clothes, it's not going to be tameh. The reason is, a person's throat is the mechitza for tumah for as far as an oif tahar. So also nevelas oif tahar has got mechitza. It's got the ability to mematame a severe tumah, and it's still considered it's going the ability tumah chamora even before it's reached that mechitza, before that stage. So the same thing in Purim and ceremonies, Rafim. Although they have a mechitza where they can be matame a severe tumah, that's outside the azara. Nevertheless, we should consider it as if it's already now being able to provide that tumah chamora, even though it's still in the azara. Our Rabbi Lazar Jeremiah, Rabbi Lazar from the south said, Nivas Haif Hatar. Now, yes, it's got a mechitza. We said the throat is matame. The throat of the matame person when it's in his throat. So mechitza b'kol makom. That means the mechitza is everywhere. A person can eat it wherever he is. It's not lacking distance from place to place to be prepared for tumah. It's ready now, muchan, right? A person can eat it here, can eat it there, can eat it anywhere. However, Elu, that's the Purim Masir from Nisrafim, Mechitzasan, where is the tumah that they're going to provide? Mechutz Yerushalayim. Shimon will be outside Yerushalayim, or outside the Azara Kudz Rabbanon. If it's not yet left there, it could be it's not considered ready to provide a severe tumah, because the place where they are now is not prepared for that. Do you understand? A person can put it in his throat anywhere. So this tumah can be anywhere. So you can have the earlier stage tumah maybe. Whereas these things, I know there's no tumah here now. It's only when he gets outside Yerushalayim or outside the Azara. So very good question. We have no answer. Okay. Now we come to, the laws of pigul, right? So usually if you have the wrong machshava, that the animals should be, let's say, eaten or burnt in the wrong time, then there's pigul, there's kares, is for the four avodas, the four avodas, shchita, and receiving the blood, sprinkling the blood, right, putting on the mizbeach, etc. So what have we got here? An animal becomes pigul if you do one of the four avodas, shchita, receiving the blood, taking the blood to the mizbeach, putting the blood on the mizbeach. And the idea of the animal being eaten after time. Now, whether you thought about the mizbeach having it late, or you thought about the person eating it late, right? Now, these avodas, how does it respond to the Purim, Masirim, and Nisrafim? Which ones can have pigul? Purim, and Nisrafim, Masirim, and Nisrafim, sheshachtan, you slaughter them with the thinking, lizrek is done when you're going to sprinkle the blood, lemacha, the next day. Pigul, that you created pigul status. Or if you slaughtered it with the thought, lahakte emurin lamacha, you're going to put the limbs on the mizbeach next day. Pigul. So sprinkling, or emurin on the mizbeach, you had the wrong date in mind, is pigul. Lisrei ves basara, if you're going to burn the flesh outside Yerushalayim lamacha, no, that's not one of the four avodas, lo pigul, that's not pigul. Lo shalai chishev, you didn't think, machshav pigul, lo lachilas adam, lo lachilas mizbeach. It's only on what you eat and what the mizbeach eats, not what you're going to burn outside. That's not one of the avodas we're talking about. Rosh Shammai asks, Avdu ha'emurim, if the limbs of the part or the sire got lost before you sprinkle the blood, ma lizrek sadam alabasa, can you sprinkle the blood based on the flesh you have? You've still got some flesh behind. It's going to be burnt. That's still around. Now with other karbonos, if you've got a kazayas of flesh which can be eaten, or the murim, you can sprinkle the blood. Purim and Nisrafim, they only have flesh which is going to be burnt. Does the burning of them outside, is that like going on a mizbeach? Can I sprinkle the blood based on that? Rav Shammai never heard what Rav Elazar said, that when you slaughter these things and you have a machshava to burn the flesh tomorrow, that's not pigul, because that's not an avodah. That's not called an avodah. So you can't sprinkle the blood based on what you're going to burn in the outside, because that's not an avodah. So burning the Purim is not the same as Haktarah. You can't sprinkle the blood based on that. Tana Rav Zakkai learned, one thing's clear. Zah, Shesaraf, if a Yisrael burnt the Purim Yisrafim, Matame begodim, yes, he's Tameh, his clothes are Tameh. Anyways, Kasha, anyone can do it, Yisrael can do it. Where is the question? What's the din if it was burnt at night? If burning these things like other avodas, which usually are done during the day, or do we say no? Israel can do it. You can do it at night. So the Gemara answers, Kava Chayvah. Ma'im Hikte Murim, Beresei Murim, She'enu Kasher Bazar, Yisrael can't do it. That's kosher b'layla, that's kosher at night. So Elo, the Purim and Sirim and Israfim, which are kosher Bazar, Elo Din Shu Kasher b'layla, definitely it should be okay at night. Now the Gemara brings a brisa, which discusses the people who help with the burning of the Purim, are they tamei and tamei clothes? It says for Hasoyref, the one who burns it. Now, clearly it says Isam. That tells me only the one who burns it is tamei, has to wash his clothes. Not the one who sort of started the light before they brought the animal along. Not the one who put the wood on the mizbeh, on the fire there. And Ezo Hasoyref, who is the one who is called Hasoyref? Zam Sayeh B'Shas Reifa, the one who helps when they're turning the meat over, right? Putting the wood on the fire and turning the wood in the fire, stoking up the coals. That's the one who becomes tamei. Rabbi Yossi, Amra, this tells me that a person B'Sayeh B'Shas Reifa, if you help during the burning process, Tamei Begadim, then his clothes do indeed become tamei. If you move around a kazayis of the meat to hurry up its burning, again you are tamei begadim, you become tamei. The whole question is, Ella, if you're in Yerushalayim, or v'yadai kaira, right, you've got a beam in your hand, and you're moving a kazayis of flesh outside the walls, and you are inside. You're in Yerushalayim, the burning's outside, you're fiddling long distance. Ma was the din. You're in Yerushalayim. Nishmeina min hada. We learn from the following. It says, "V'haitzi," you'll take out the part outside the camp, and then you'll burn it. Ma hamaitzi, just like the one who takes it out, it's not tamei ad sheyotzi till he goes out lachutz. Afasof, the one who burns it ad sheyisra b'chutz, he has to be outside burning it. So if you're in Yerushalayim, you're not tamei. Taman. Now, what about helping the burning of Parvasaya of Yom Kippur? Now, also the one who's involved in that becomes tamei. Taman, now with Paradoma, Amachizkia, it says in the Torah, the one who burns it to wash his clothes, right, but tamei ad ha'arev. So the fact that the Torah added tamei ad ha'arev, now the tefillah is not mitai, so we learn the rabbis hasoyref to include the one who burns it, who supports the burning. And just like Paradoma, the one who helps in the burning, but hasoyref, so also here of Hacha Kain, that anyone supporting is also tamei. Should we carry on? They said to the Kohen Gadol, the Asai has reached the Midbar, we can carry on with our Avodah. How do they know it reached? Did Ka'is Hayaisin. So did Ka'is, whether there's sort of a flag system, we'll see what that is. Hayaisin. Between Yerushalayim and the crook and the rock, and there were people, onlookers, Manifim Sudrin, when they reached there, the people, they would look and wave their flags, whatever, wave their cloths, but Yaidin, and they knew, Shegei Asai Midbar. They reached the Midbar. Rabbi Yehuda, but they didn't need all this. They had a sign, 3 mil from Yerushalmi Beis Chayron, which is the beginning of the Midbar. They would go, escorting the Mishaleach. They would go with him. 1 mil to the first booth, mil, they come back a mil, mil, they wait a time of a mil. Basically, they've got a time period, which they know how long it would take. So they're relying on the fact that 3 mil is about enough time it would take, and they could work out they would reach that time by then. Right? There's 3 mil from Yerushalayim to Beis Chayron, and they would go escort him 1 mil to the first, then come back and wait a mil, and you know that probably it's reached the midbar. So it's not necessarily reached the rock, then it's reached the midbar. If 1 mil is not so far, you can look at Amdan Adas. Some say they surrounded Harav, which is a mill going round. All right. Rabbi Shmuel Aimer. They had another simon. They reached the midbar. There was a thread. Was tied to the hechel. When it reached the goat, reached the midbar, it would turn white. If your sins will be like red, then they'll be like white. Mao did chiyos. What's mentioned in the Mishnah? Kovalon. These are big stones and tall stones, towers that people would stand with their cloths in their hand and they would wave. Hadron alach shnei seirei. Hadron alach shnei seirei. Okay, Rabbi said next year will be 2 weeks today.